What's up, everybody? I'm Sam. That's Wick. You're listening to, well, what used to be the 21 Years podcast, but Wick and I are starting to make some changes here. Looking forward to that. Want to run over that with you guys, but please continue to share. We'll still be here on Facebook Live, going live with you guys, talking about all kinds of crazy things. We're going to change things up a little bit for ourselves. I know you guys enjoyed the 80s and 90s podcasts we were doing, but Wick and I have decided we're going to kind of switch things up a little bit. We're going to be doing some different stuff, and it's going to involve stuff that's kind of weird, creepy, strange, odd. For now, we will call the channel on YouTube and the show The Creep Factor, because we'll be talking about interesting stuff like tonight. We'll be talking about the social media dilemma documentary that's on Netflix. Wick and I both have watched and been terrified in watching. And I know a lot of you guys have watched it too. So think of us as going into a direction that's kind of like Twilight Zone-y, or, you know, what's the other one that's on Netflix, Wick?
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Yeah, we'll be talking about really kind of weird, odd, dark, and light
Things that unsettle us.
things that are unsettling. Yes, you nailed it. So we'll be doing that. I think it'll be a lot more fun for you guys to enjoy. We'll be tackling all kinds of stuff. It kind of keeps us from being kind of limited. We'd love to do in 21 years, but you know, sometimes you feel like you're a little restricted. You're kind of not, kind of all over the place. I think honestly, with this new format, we can talk about current stuff, weird stuff, past stuff, anything that we want to talk about, as long as it has a certain kind of feel to it, which is unsettling. So think of it that way. Like I said, kind of a Twilight Zone type of thing. I think you guys will enjoy it. We're going to go on YouTube. Facebook Live is a lot of fun, and we'll still have our stuff on Facebook Live, but YouTube would just allow us to grow the audience a little bit more, and see more interaction, I believe. And so you'll still see us here, but it'll kind of be under a new title. And hopefully, if things go well there, we'll go to doing some more websites and things like that to kind of grow. But we were going to try to do YouTube, as a matter of fact, tonight, and then just share it here. But we had some technical difficulties, but those will get worked out. And I think we're both pretty excited about the new format. When you do podcasts, sometimes you go through a lot of changes and growth and learning more about yourself and your partner and what's best and formats and things like that. It's very common. That's usually when people quit, but we're not quitters. We like what we do. So we're going to just keep trying to figure out what's really makes us excited and passionate. And I think we've nailed it. So Wick, welcome. Glad to see you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Seems like it's been forever.
Ages.
Yes, it seems like it's been forever. And it's nice to kind of feel like things are back to normal a little bit. Football, all that stuff is coming on. So it's nice to kind of feel a little bit of normal in life. So that brings us to normal being really part of our everyday thing. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about social media, and we're going to talk a little bit about this documentary, Social Dilemma, which I think is important. It's pretty popular right now. You know, Wick, what was your real first experience with social media? I mean, do you remember? I mean, mine was probably MySpace.
It was probably MySpace, but probably a little farther back to the 90s. Some chat rooms. And I realized very early on its propensity for trolling, even though that wasn't a coined phrase yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember back, we were too cheap to have AOL. So my parents bought Prodigy, which was the cheap knockoff of AOL. And it was the cheapest version you can get. That's just, if you know my folks, they tend to not jump out there and spend a lot of money. We didn't have cable till I was like almost out of high school. But anyway, so we had Prodigy, and I remember those. I remember going online, taking forever. We all know, if you're a Generation Xer, it takes a long time to get on and go through all the screeching and screaming and fax machine noises. finding it online. And I remember you'd have to leave a post on a post board back then, and then like check back in 24 hours because it took so long for somebody to respond to you. So you would go to like
Yeah.
a room
Hmm.
and post like, oh, like it might be, Pink Floyd fan room or something. Oh yeah, this new album's killer. And then you go out and go do shit, come back, and somebody might post
That's how
back
old
in
it
24
was. Pink Floyd's new album.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where it all started. And then of course, I think, and we're going to talk a little bit about social medias, and stick with us. If you think this is going to be a boring topic, I can assure you it will not be,
Will not
because
be.
all of this is going to lead to our current event of situations, in our theory. And, I think I think Generation Xers, which Wick and I are, and I think many of you are, we have one foot in social media and one foot out. I mean, when we were just at that point where we were old enough where video games became popular again with Nintendo and all of that. But I remember playing Nintendo and still going outside and doing things. I think when social media came along really heavily, we were maybe late high school, early college. It's type of thing where you kind of jumped on for something really cool, and then you would jump off and go live life.
Yeah.
And it didn't really become, for me anyway, it didn't really become a major part of my life until I got much older. And I think that gives us a little bit of a reality grasp on the situation, Wick. Would you agree kind of in that same way, or do you think that it's changed a lot, changed us a lot?
I think it's changed, just generationally speaking, probably Generation X the least. I think baby boomers and millennials and Generation Y, I guess, seem to be affected the most by it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very difficult for baby boomers. And I can, we're right in the
There was
middle
no
of that
learning
because,
curve there for them. It was just straight into Facebook. They weren't even on MySpace.
yeah, that's very true. I don't
You
remember
know?
anybody that was a boomer really on MySpace. I mean, unless you
Mm-mm.
were part of the technological group that you just came up, maybe being a
Yeah, if
design.
you're like a gearhead, yeah.
Yeah. But MySpace was simple enough. You just basically, for those of you who don't know what MySpace was, it was pretty revolutionary. It was just an opportunity, and I kind of miss it because I think that's what social media should have just stuck with. Of course, things are always evolving, but it was just really simple. I mean, you just created a profile, you could invite your friends, and you could post on your wall. You could send private messages. It was every bit of what Facebook really was, except I felt like MySpace was a little bit more music grounded. You could play videos when you went onto when
And
people came on your
ironic
site, it would play
and
music and stuff.
ironically, that I think is kind of what killed it
Hmm.
because people didn't have these supercharged Wi-Fi's like they do now. And remember loading people's pages and it just got more and more bling on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh God, come on.
Oh yeah, we could figure out there was a code for wallpaper you could put in the background of
Yeah,
of your MySpace, and I just think it got really just kind of bogged down. And I remember like the Facebook infancy. I remember people going to Facebook and leaving MySpace. I was like, why would you ever leave here? It's like leaving home. Like
yeah.
rent's paid for. It's all good. It's a nice, comfy bed, man. 4 square meals. There's no reason to go somewhere else. And of course, eventually, MySpace became a ghost town.
It seemed like
Um,
it happened in like a week.
it
Like
it
suddenly,
happened very quickly, and I just think the format of Facebook was a little bit more wide open. Now, um, Wick, when you think about social media being created, when you think about Twitter now, and you think about Facebook, and you think about Instagram, and all of these things now that pretty much run, um, they're pretty much a part of everyone's life for the most part. Do you think that the original intention was innocent, or do you think what we're about to talk about was the end game for social media at the time?
well, if you just uh, go off the interviews from the Social Dilemma, I think human beings' intentions are largely good, but and I think especially the infancy of social media, people really had an idealism that overtook them, and I don't think they really appreciated the human psychology when it interacts with these platforms, and especially given like when there's no consequence
Hmm.
to your language or offending people, and getting kind of a thrill out of that when our lizard brains start lighting up. I've you know and our propensity, our unfortunate propensity to need to win an argument at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it's turned into. I think originally, and of course, as we dig into the documentary on Netflix of the social dilemma, I encourage social media dilemma. I encourage everyone who has an opportunity to really watch it because it's pretty eye opening. As we're here on Facebook discussing it, it'll
Right.
probably be censored and the show will probably be removed. But it's a necessary watch, I think, just because I think it's really eye opening. It's one thing to kind of know how this thing evolves. I think it starts as a really innocent idea of how do we connect people and how do we have more ways to have people be able to reach out and touch each other or be connected to each other, not touch, but be connected to each other. And Facebook provides that. I mean, I remember like the biggest draw of Facebook at the beginning was really being able to find other people once it became popular that you haven't seen in many years and connecting with them and send them a friend request or send them a message and, hey, how you been? What's been going on with you? And kind of catching up with that. Um, in fact, I don't know if it was you, but somebody told me, it might have been you. Somebody told me I don't go to class reunions anymore because Facebook's there. I can connect who I want to connect with without having to go to spend tickets and go to a room and be stuck talking to people that are sometimes have a very limited capacity for from the earlier
Right.
years.
Right.
Um, and I think that's very much like that. I think Facebook and social media really kind of became or really started as a class reunion online. Um,
Exactly.
and I
And
think
at
it
its
was
best, it
innocent.
still is.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of that too. Um, but I think it's also allowed you to kind of avoid one-on-one interaction. And we've seen that with the younger generations who, although we dabble in it, the younger generations are absorbed into it. I mean, they're born into this at a very
Right.
early age as far as their adult lives and their young adult lives. They're pretty much absorbed into this kind of thing. And so their personal experience with one-on-one interaction is very limited because of it. Um, and I think now we're starting to see the dangers of that. Um, but I think to make the social media dilemma, a little easier for people to understand, it's basically like this, and we're going to discuss it further. But for those who haven't seen it, basically,
Watch it.
yes, watch
It
it.
it should be required
Yeah, it should be a
to like get
requirement.
your license renewed or vote or whatever.
Well, as much as we're going to talk about Netflix too, as much as this friendly beast has given us a meal to eat on, Netflix is not without its own guilt of being its same at the same kind of problem. So I think they're almost with the release of this documentary. I think it's almost like, hey, we're part of the problem, but we're going to expose it first. But we're not going to talk about ourselves. We're going to talk about everybody else that you're dealing with on social media platforms. And we're going to talk about, and when we talk about it, you're going to agree with me. There are things that are going on Netflix that I think are very much the same way. But basically, the social media dilemma is so much of you go on to Facebook. We're going to use Facebook specifically because it's a lot easier to explain. You go on Facebook. When you first go on Facebook, Facebook knows nothing about you. But as you begin to find interest in things, research things, look up groups, look up bands, look up all these things, Facebook has this basic brain to make life simple on you that collects all this data over and over and over again. And it learns what you like and it learns what you
Mm.
are. And it basically creates this virtual you in Facebook. So picture yourself in a picture a basic empty vessel electronic doll that's in a Facebook box. And as you do things, it begins to fill that doll up with personality traits that you have. Now, from there, it begins to say, well, I know what you like. So let's say that Wick is on there and he's currently interested in the current election, and he goes in there and he wants to look up Biden, or he wants to look up Biden's Facebook page or whatever. Facebook immediately notices that and says, huh, okay, well, this must be somebody who has a liberal leaning thought on politics. So originally what this was all supposed to do was to suggest you and match you with people that were like you. So groups that you're interested in, biking, hiking, fishing. When all of this was set up, this whole analytic process, it was to match you with people that were like you. But what ended up happening was this thing became a monster, and it began to match you with your personal political beliefs. And instead of matching you with people like you and groups that you might be interested in and saying, hey, you like biking, why don't you go to the biking group of Georgia or Mountain Bikers Atlanta or whatever, and begin to take notice of your political beliefs. And because of that, and because the program is designed to feed things to you that you like, because the idea is that the more you like things that are on your Facebook page, the longer you stay.
They
So
need to keep you engaged.
it began to build a wall around all of us based on our political beliefs. And it took notice of every comment you made for any reason, for what political side you might be on, every page you've ever visited, every group you thought of joining. And it's connected with Google. So every time you've looked up a news article, or every time you've looked up something about Trump or something about Republicans or something about defund the police, Facebook has taken absolute note of that and plugs this into that empty vessel that you have online. And it has created an idea of what you love or what it believes you love. And it has built a wall around you to only see what you like. And what it has done, and we're going to get deeper into this, is basically build a wall around conservatives that are getting drilled with information that they're right, and liberals getting drilled with
echo
information
chambers,
that think
billions of echo chambers.
yes. And you're just surrounded by things that agree with you. That's why all of your YouTube videos are a certain kind. All your YouTube videos that it's sharing there are the same kind. All the things on your wall, the things that you search on Google, you might be searching for a new bike, and all of a sudden on Facebook, there's all these people trying to sell you a bike. All these things are connected and has built a digital you that has basically manipulated you. Now, that's the social dilemma. Social media dilemma. I keep leaving out media. Social media dilemma. Now, this particular documentary on Netflix actually has people that worked in the industry that created all these social media platforms that are now leaving because of the monster that they've helped create. And now they're speaking
Major
out on
players.
these things. Major players. Let's do this. When you first started to watch the documentary, were you aware of how much Facebook was absorbing your personality into its own little box?
I mean, I knew it. I didn't know it in the beginning. I don't think it was that as precise in the beginning as it became over the last decade. But what disturbed me about the social dilemma was the degree of accuracy of the algorithms. That is, and I know, in their best intentions, that was just for marketing, but they did create this monster, this Frankenstein, because the way to get people most passionate, the most engaged, is to make them angry, and the best way to do that is politics. And now we are experiencing the unfortunate side effects of that. And unfortunate is a kind word.
The monetary idea of this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're creating this platform, you sit there and you say, how do we sell things to people that aren't buying anything? How do we make profit here?
Yeah.
No, we're not charging anyone anything.
No.
They're basically signing off on their rights when they sign up for us. We have all this ability. What are we going to do? Well, we've already got this matching software that tells us what groups they would like to be in. We're trying to give them what they love. The only thing that we can do to monetarize this is to sell them things that they love. So then your information, I think, I don't know how it all works, but I think companies come along and say, look, Sam's a golfer.
Hmm.
I own a golfing company. Do you have any others like Sam that would buy stuff from me? Probably if we post on there, because now we're talking about a very targeted demographic, a purchaser.
Hmm.
I said, yeah, I've got a million Sams, and they're all looking for golf clubs. They were searching on it for Google. You
And
want to
that's
be
the
able to have their
difference.
Facebook page?
And that's the difference between old television and even cable television, network television, then cable television, and this. This is so specific.
Yes.
You know, the 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 advertising, what they know about you, and the accrued information, and how they tailor that specifically to you. Um, how that can go beyond marketing in the end, and how it has, and now we have more than experienced. I mean, look at what's happening on the streets. That is a direct result, even more so than I think cable news
Yeah.
is social media.
And I think cable news is a little bit hijacked by this as well, because
They're
the
having to
idea,
compete.
yeah, the idea of news is I got to give you what you want to hear. And I think a lot of news follows trends of social media. And so they're a little bit bamboozled by the situation as well, because a lot of their reporting and a lot of the things that they find important is what's going to be important on Facebook and social media to people, or people are not going to look at it. And they very much judge that by their own news stories that they put out to see how many clicks they get.
Right. And they are encouraging their audience to interact on their website as if it's a social media site.
Exactly. Exactly. And now they're involved in Facebook and Twitter and everything else, and they're putting out their stories and whatnot. And they know what works and what's not working. Um, and basically, monetarily, somebody, a corporation or whatever, says, "Hey, that's great. I've got this target audience of people who like mountain bikes. Now I will send them ads on mountain bikes. And what are you going to charge me for that?" And Facebook says, "Well, every time they click, just pay us $1." I mean, it's really cheap. I mean, you're getting somebody who is actually literally interested in your product, going to look at it.
Right.
All
Which
we're
you didn't
asking for
have
is
the television.
yeah, all we're looking for is $1 kickback every time they do that. I mean, it's almost a guaranteed sell.
Yeah.
What's a slam dunk for a corporation? And so monetarily, I understand it, and I understand why these algorithms were created by Facebook to create this. Um, it's like, what's the difference of Ford running an ad about their new Mustang coming out on ABC and paying millions for that, versus you going out on Google and saying, I'm interested in the new Mustang, and I'm going to go look at them, and I'm going to see what the MSRP is on them. And then when you immediately get done and go back to Facebook, guess what? Every local dealership's now hitting you up for your
Right.
new Ford Mustang.
Yeah. On television, they had to a best guess. We think this audience is going to be tuned into this show at this time. They
Right.
didn't know these are people that are actually actively searching for things, or just the personality type that would search for these things.
I'm
That's
I,
what's scary.
I'm in sales somewhat. Some would say I'm not. I'm in sales. Some would say I'm not a salesman, but I am in sales. And if somebody told me, how much would you pay for 100 people that are currently looking for something that you're selling right now, that have gone through a huge process to get there? It would be, I would say, how much? I mean, you're going to spend every penny you have to buy it, because you just don't get that kind of lead anywhere else.
Right.
And these corporations that are spending millions on commercials are just salivating at this opportunity. But the monster's gotten so big that it went from the marketing, it went from, hey, you need to find your classmates. Why don't you find your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend? Why don't you find that kid you were in the neighborhood with that was your best friend when you were 10? Why don't you see what they're doing now? Why don't you see what your cousins are up to? Why don't you see all this stuff? Oh, okay, cool. And then on top of that, why don't you go see what other people who have your same interest are doing, like mountain bikers and golfers and all this other stuff? Okay, cool. You're going to suggest some groups for me to join. Fantastic. This socializing is fantastic. I don't have to leave my house, and I can be caught hours and hours on end reading people talking about something that I enjoy, or catching up with friends that I haven't seen. To, well, we've got to make money off of this. How do we do that? To, all right, the only way we can do that is to gather all the information we can, fill in this empty vessel online, create a salmon wick in our little box, and get every little personality trait we can from them, and suggest things to them. But then it went a step too far, and it got into the political realm, and it started to say, you're conservative, so everything I will send you on your Facebook page. Now, I don't think that this was intentional at all, but I think it's kind of like a match.
Well, it was intentional in terms of we need to keep them engaged at all costs.
Right.
But they couldn't have foreseen the outcome.
I don't think so. And I think that was to the original point. I don't think that these designers of Facebook and social media, the engineers and programmers of social media, ever thought that they would have the power to manipulate how people view their life outside of themselves. So now we're at a point, after we have created this algorithm to say, hey, this is how we sell things to people. It's almost like Match.com. All of a sudden, we take 36 of your traits and personalities and match them with somebody just like yours.
It's exactly what it is.
And they did that. And now they matched it to, let's say, me being conservative. Now the Hodge twins, everything that, can't remember his name, the guy that's the Jewish guy that's always on, Ben
Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. All of these things that are, don't let Biden take over. He's going to do this, he's going to do that to you. All of these things are now, because Facebook's not trying to create a certain political ploy. What they're saying is, this is what you like, so here's a lot of it. And then you're surrounded by people like you, commercials that you like, ads that begin to, and then what we have, Wick, that's more dangerous is now conspiracy theories, falsehoods, half-truths, paranoia. For instance, if you're an anti-masker and you're somebody who thinks that the coronavirus is over, I'm not going to say you're wrong or right. Your coronavirus beliefs are that it's way overblown. This is something that's we don't need to shut down the economy for, and all. Guess what? True or false, you're going to get people that are talking about that in videos being sent to you. Now it's going to be somebody who works in a hospital, who their hospital is empty and nobody's in here with coronavirus. Everything's fine.
Right. And then you take that for the whole of the medical world. Because
that's all you get.
That's a doctor right there.
But it's not our fault. I want people to understand that. And I think it kind of I want you to be less defensive if you're listening to this, because it's not really your fault. You're being hammered with truths and facts on both sides. And because that's all you're seeing, you think everybody else is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's Facebook is absolutely, it's like a snowflake. No, it's like DNA. No one is just alike. So as I'm seeing all of this, and Wick might be seeing everything about Trump ruin the economy, Trump collusion with Russia, Trump is destroying America, Trump is doing all these things. Wick is seeing that and saying, how in the hell is Sam conservative? Doesn't he see what I'm seeing? He's nuts. How can you be anti-mask when I'm getting all these videos about how fast coronavirus spreads and how quickly it kills some people? Is it okay if people are just dead? That didn't bother you? You care more about the economy? And then the division's created, right?
Mm-hmm. And then we create tribes.
Tribalism.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so if we lead that to where we are today, Wick, would you say and I want to hear your opinion on kind of where we are right now with the political divide and the protest and whatnot. Um, like I would say that the more liberal people that maybe are involved with Black Lives Matter argue for that point in comments because they are reading your comments too. All the people that you follow that might be involved with Black Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter itself, or I don't even know if they have a Facebook page. Um, you're getting hit pretty hard with brutality or police brutality videos and whatnot. Being told this is why we got to defund the police. How now that we are where we are, how do you think social media and Facebook in particular has created that problem of going from what we see online to what we're witnessing on the streets?
I think it's a direct result, and it happened at a time when people were probably um, shut in and more ensconced in the echo chamber than ever.
Yeah.
And then a series of events, and their anxiety was already peaked, and it just reached the point of it crossed the threshold, and people left their computers and took to the streets in a way that hasn't happened since before the Civil War.
Does it
And
feel like they're armed with the knowledge it feels like they've gotten on social media, because a lot of the protesting that we're seeing are younger people. I haven't seen anyone my dad's age out there throwing bottles. It is just what I witness personally when I watch things. Um, it seems like are they armed in your opinion with what they've gotten from Facebook? Does
well,
that arm
certainly,
them in a way where it's like, okay, I'm tired of seeing this. I've got to go do something about it now.
yeah. And then they see, once it starts, and then people see the crowd. Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. They see the crowd on Facebook, they see it on the videos, and they're like, the hell with this, I'm going in.
I got to be a part of it.
I've got to be a part of it.
Now, on the other side, you've got baby boomers who are not as connected on social media. Now, my parents have Facebook pages. Whether or not they get into them, I would seriously doubt it. Very often, I think they check in, see pictures of my kids.
My mom was the opposite.
Oh, very involved?
All day, every day.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Now, but she had a reality before social media.
Right.
And I would imagine, true or false, probably the way that she was before social media, she's probably as hard on it, if not harder now, on her beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So social media is
I
built
think, but that's true. That's not just true of my mom. That's true of anybody that is that engaged.
Yeah, of course.
But it really, with it's the, I hate to say fake news, but it's the fake news and the conspiracy theories that have resulted from social media that's the most disturbing. They've gone from fringe to mainstream now.
Yeah, and on top of it, I mean, now it's kind of like society itself as a whole now has to be very careful about what it does in real life, because of upsetting large groups of people that are armed with social media knowledge that's been catered to them. And so standing up against it makes you a moral enemy. And so anybody, for instance, on the other side of this, who is supportive of the police department, who is, a gun-toting member of the NRA and whatnot, that is getting all this other information, is going, no, we're going to fight against this. We're not going to let this happen on our watch, creating quite a bit of tension and division. And I think it's also because people are so indoctrinated with what's coming through their social media, it's very hard for these people to have a conversation.
It's impossible.
And most of their
And
conversations are happening on social media.
right. Well, there's no consequence for your actual for what you say.
Right. And
I
there's
mean,
no human
things
element.
that you because in if you were talking to somebody one on one because of the social contract, um, you would never say in a million years, but you will say on Facebook.
Yeah. 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 And I almost think that you don't want to have it in person because then you know that there's some kind of moral block there that keeps you from being the same person,
Right.
live
But I think that's even
than you are
beginning
on
to
Facebook.
dissolve now.
Yeah, we see that. We
You
see
know,
that. I think that's where we're at. I think we've seen I think we've seen the wall of social media between real life and social media melt, and they've merged together. Um, and we're seeing it on both sides. Maskers, anti-maskers, coronavirus believers, coronavirus hoaxers, vaccines, autism vaccines, anti-vaccine people, vaccine people, Republican, Democrat. I mean,
the,
it's very divisive.
one of the most disturbing aspects for me is almost this fierce contempt for the intellectual world now. As anybody that dares um, have a scientific opinion about anything is ran down, and their credentials immediately questioned.
Yeah.
These are the same people you're going to be going to when you get sick.
Well, I remember there, and I'll be honest with you. I view myself as an independent, what I call 21st century libertarian, which is a kind way of saying I'm not an extreme conservative. I probably lean right, which I think you're the same way. You don't lean extreme left, um, but you kind of lean left. And I don't consider either one of us extremists. But I do see because of some things that I've maybe researched or looked up or liked something that was presented to me on Facebook. I remember I got like this is a doctor talking about coronavirus and how fake it was until I realized I was like, it's really weird. I'm watching this and this dude has a diagram of the spine on his back wall.
He's a chiropractor.
He's a chiropractor. And I thought, wow, like I was all in on this dude. And a lot of you conservative people know exactly what I'm talking about because you saw the same video.
See, they're taking advantage of our psychology in these instances because we don't. It is our natural intention to deny danger,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want to hear that this virus, we're that vulnerable. People, we cannot. We will do anything. Our psyche demands that we do anything to block that out.
Mm-hmm.
When we're the only species that I can think of that demonstrates denial,
Yeah.
and now because of social media, it's propagated that impulse to the most farthest extreme.
That your denial is right or that your belief is right,
Right,
regardless of what the truth is.
right.
Like,
I
I
mean,
think
even
I read a
conspiracy theory.
statistic.
For me, most conspiracy theories, and this is what I argue with conspiracy theorists, is you are trying to make order out of chaos. I mean, if you are, that is exactly what that you think about JFK. Nobody wants to think the most powerful man in the world is vulnerable to a nutbag in the Texas Book Depository, can be shot down in broad daylight like that. Because if he's that vulnerable, how vulnerable are we?
Yes.
And I think it all kind of grows out of that, trying to make order out of chaos.
Yeah. Everybody else is crazy but me.
Right.
Yeah. And it definitely feeds into that thought. Now, we're not here to tell you you're right or wrong about how you feel about the coronavirus or masks. That's not the point of
No.
what we're doing. The point is that we're going to talk about what we think you have to do to fight it. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to unplug because it's a really, really tough thing to ask people to do. I think you can.
I mean, some
Um,
people's jobs are dependent upon it.
yeah, they're
So,
dependent upon. Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
Um, but here we are, and I want to discuss where we go from here, because one of the comments that was made in that documentary that was very scary to me, and I don't know when this documentary was actually made, but they said, what is the ultimate, like, what's the end game with all of
This
this?
is scary.
And the guy said Civil War. I don't know if that's what you're talking about too.
Yeah, I think that was is that the Reddit guy?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Um, which I'm a Reddit geek. I'm very guilty, but um, yeah, and it's like Civil War, and you wonder, man, we're right here. We're right here. If people don't shake out of where they are right now, if you don't shake out of it, we're heading that way. You know, I thought a lot of this protesting would end. I kind of thought football would come along and everybody, and I'm not saying what they believe is not important. So check yourself before you get mad at me. I'm just saying that we're a species that really depends on distraction. And we haven't had it in a while. Now something big has come along. Football's back again. I really kind of thought, and we haven't really seen the results of what that will bring. But um, it seems like it's still pretty strong. And I think that it will only get stronger. And we've already seen it, Wick, and we kind of touched it on other shows. We've touched on it where bad's going to meet evil pretty quickly. This has gone on a long time. People are frustrated. Whether you're in on the movement or not on the movement, look, I've said it before. I understand where you're coming from. I think you have valid points, but tell me what your end game is. Find some leadership, organize, and tell me what your end game is. If your end game, you don't have an end game if all you're going to do is just stop traffic all the time. Because you're not telling me to do anything. And the only thing you're making me do is more angry. You're making me angry if I'm in that traffic. You don't have an end game. It's a very disorganized thing, but it's also extremely destructive. There was a video about a whole, like, kind of a, let's say hold up, but where they stopped traffic under a bridge in Seattle. And in one of those cars was a woman who was dying. She had, if it's true, there's video of the guy asking for them to move so he could please get his wife to the University of Washington hospital because she had some condition and she only was able to get in about 60% oxygen. And, you know, could they please just let him through? And he even told me, he's like, you know, look, she's a black woman. Can you please let me through? I'm you know, it's my wife. And they didn't move. Eventually that gets old. And let me tell you something. When five of you in a car, five cars, 10 people block a very busy highway, there's probably about 200 people in those cars that eventually are going to all get out.
But you said something very important. Now we are, because of social media, and this is a two-pronged issue. It's a good thing we have to question that video, and it's a bad thing we have to question that video.
Yeah. 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 And I have to say and I tried
Is
to
that
find
real?
some truth on it. You know,
Yeah.
What happened to the woman that was in the thing? I haven't got anything back on it. This was just a couple of days ago. Hopefully I'll be able to verify what happened. But there is video of him on TikTok, and one of the protesters is filming him. He's not filming it.
Right.
He's walking around saying, guys, please, my wife is dying in the car. But point being, 10 of you stop traffic. And I have to say, if I'm in that traffic, I'm probably getting out of my car. If my kids aren't in the car, now my kids are the most important thing next to my wife in my life, and I would never put them in danger. But if I'm in that car by myself and you've stopped to traffic and I'm looking at about 70 cars, I think I'm going to go around and talk to every one of those drivers and say, you know what? We can end this real quick. Let's just go up there and kick some asses and get out and get to moving. We can move. 6 of us can move a car out to the side. The cars aren't that heavy when 10 people are lifting it. And let's just get them out of the way. Eventually, that's going to be the result. So when we talk about the comment about Civil War, Wick, don't you think that's kind of where we're already starting to go? So now protesters, we've seen some videos of protesters being armed for their own protection instead of just getting out of the way of a car. I mean, honestly, you're making these stances, and honestly, just if a car's coming, just get out of the way. You're still making your point. But now we've gotten to the point where it's like, no, you're not going to run over me because I stood in your way or grabbed on top of your car. Now I'm going to put my gun in your windshield and tell you to stop. Well, I kind of have the feeling that because this has been built, and I believe social media has played its major role in this, that now we're going to be at a standoff situation, right? I mean, we're going to see those not involved in protest fighting back to the protesters. It seems like it's just I'm waiting for the news report, and we've already seen it. Remember the
This has
kid who
been coming.
shot?
This has been ramping up for 4 years. I mean, think about Charlottesville 4 years ago.
Yep. And think about
Yeah.
just not too long ago the kid who's been arrested for with the AK-47 that shot a protester. Now, no comment here, but one of them was hitting him in the head with a skateboard. The other one was running up on him, and he's what, 17? Yeah, he fired. Should he have? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not in his situation. I can't say I'm not in the other person's situation. I don't know, but I know he did. That's undisputed. So what happens when this becomes the norm? What happens when people go, okay, here comes the protesters. I'm going to get a bunch of my friends together and we're going to go protect our part of the
And
town.
nobody's thinking about the consequences.
There's huge consequences that haven't happened yet. We've seen a taste of it. But protesters and the protester who was shot, from the pictures on social media, again, we must question, has a gun in his hand. So now we're about to hit that point where we're kind of on the verge of a civil war. Do you feel that, or do you think that's extreme?
I feel both. But I do think, from what I've gathered from people in Portland and other in Seattle and other cities, it's a lot more isolated than it seems on social media. Because if you're watching it on social media, you see a corner in Portland, and that becomes Portland.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And we see one police brutality situation, and it's all of them.
Yeah.
You know, I I read a statistic that I need to research. So asterisk this as you're watching it. But something about more people have been killed in the protests uh, than died. I guess than minorities died at the hand of police officers. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know, we're seeing instances of police brutality. You and I have both said that we're not on the side of police acting immorally or
Well,
illegally.
have you seen the video of the two officers trying to pull the white guy out of the car?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine showed me from TikTok, and it's these two officers trying to pull this guy out of a car. Um, I mean, the struggle goes on. It seems like for 2 minutes just to get him out of the driver's side, and that guy eventually, once they pull him out, the guy pulls a gun and shoots the officer,
Yeah,
and you don't see that video anywhere.
yeah, yeah. I
Why is that not all over social media?
yeah,
It's because it's not going to get the play.
it's not going to get the play.
Yeah.
It's just like local news, man. Um, I think there was something. I don't know if you remember seeing. Did you ever see Bowling for Columbine?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a big Michael Moore guy. I think
No.
he's, I think all these guys can be a little manipulative. But he did one where I think, and I might be remembering incorrectly. It's been a long time, but I remember when he went to Canada, and was able to walk right into somebody's house and it wasn't locked,
Yeah.
and was able to get an interview, and they were like, why would I lock my doors? I mean, it was like, in the middle of the night. And he was like, well, in America, everybody locks their door. I mean, I lock my doors every time I go to bed. I lock my
I
car up and
wonder
everything.
though. You always wonder. I remember when I was watching it when that happened. You're like, how many houses did he go to before he found one that was?
That's true.
You
But
know.
one thing that he said that, and I thought was interesting even back then, because this is way before any of this stuff started,
Yeah.
which was their local news was more positive. They reported on positive things and not on negative things, which was the reverse of American local news, which reported on the
Bleeds
guy
and
who
leads.
robbed the bank or
Mm-hmm.
the person who shot this person who happened to be black. And they like to mention that constantly,
Mm-hmm.
like to show pictures. and create and kind of boil up your fear that now this crime has come into your neighborhood, and it always seems to be a black person, so I can't trust them. And it's kind of like they set this up, and we kind of fall for it, especially local news. We're like, we're not going to trust national media, but people will watch local news. And I think local news is some of the worst because it's in your own backyard, and they take one incident and they love to re-report things. Sometimes they're just even minor. They make them worse than they are. But, um, if that's true, that we're seeing things like, the show Cops, most of the time it was a black person getting arrested and, and everything. So I think we have to understand that, especially with where we are with racism and whatnot, that a lot of this has been indoctrinated into white society as well. Maybe not on our own fault. It's been downloaded quite a bit over time as we've seen local news and as we've seen cops and all these other things. You kind of get indoctrinated that maybe this is how things really are.
Right.
And you combine all of that with what's going on now and the
We've been
manipulation.
manipulated to the nth degree.
Yeah. And here's this explosion of all these years built up. And probably what we would find, Wick, if we really dug deep, is that almost all of this is exaggerated.
Yeah.
Police brutality happens, but it's not all the time as you see it on social media. Um, you know, um, the coronavirus is serious, but maybe, not as serious to shut down the economy, or maybe it deserves to be completely shut down. The problem is that with social media, by the time we get to this point, okay, after Facebook has built this Wiccan Sam, we now don't know what's true and what's false because of the narratives and the lines that have been painted around us.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're getting misinformation and we're eating it up. And you're getting those in those videos, guys. I mean, you're getting it in your newsfeed constantly. And you'll know where you stand by what your news feeds look like for the next week. So here's
Yeah.
a little project for all the viewers. See what your news feed, keep a note of what your news feed looks like this week. And it will paint the picture of what Facebook thinks you are. Because even if you're like, you know what, I'm conservative, but I'm not this conservative. Or, I kind of thought I was independent, and these people, I was going to vote Biden, or I was going to vote Trump, or whatever. And maybe I'm being pushed to do these things. Maybe I need to step back away and do things for myself. I mean, memes, or people believe memes left and right. But
I know.
I think one of the interesting things is too, Wick, is the discussion on Russia manipulating the election. And this is really, really important too, that we need to touch on, because I don't, and you can correct me if I heard this wrong or have it wrong. But my understanding was the guy said, look, this is in a nutshell. I'm paraphrasing this. There was no like meeting of people calling each other, and no Democrats and Republicans were talking to Putin about rigging the election. That wasn't happening. All that was happening was that Russia realized we could go to Facebook and we could find undecided voters, people who are leaning right, people might be leaning left. We can find out what their interests are and what their concerns are, and we can customize videos or ads to push them to vote for Trump. Now we can say they didn't have that. That's what happened. Now listen, I'm not here to tell you Trump's bad or good. I'm not. That's not what I do here. We have our personal opinions. That's not what I'm doing.
I think they went a step further. They are, especially in 2016. I don't know if they were as active in 2020, but it was to sow division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to divide the country.
To divide the country, and I think that's certainly Putin's end game.
But we've discussed too that it's no secret that Trump was not supposed to win this election. And again, we're not going to get political here, so don't change the channel. But you can't deny Trump was not going to win the election based on every little thing that had come out. Okay. I mean, there are people that just weren't going to vote for Trump. I mean, Hillary was not a favorite either. But I think when you look back on it, you go, hold on. if Russia said, we think the worst thing for the country is Trump. Now, whether he is or not, that's not what we're discussing. But what if Russia sits there and says, we think Trump could probably be a great president for the division that we're trying to create. So let's get him elected by manipulating undecided voters who might be researching. Let's say Facebook says, well, what are you looking for, Mr. Khrushchev? And he says, well, I've got a company over here. Why don't you give me people that maybe
Mr.
are looking up elections and looking up, independent and undecided voter stuff on Google. You got some people that are doing that. Well, yeah, I've got about 50 million that are doing that. Okay. Can we buy ads for those people? And what we're going to do is we're going to paint a picture to try to help them vote for a candidate that we think will push our agenda in dividing the country. And on top of that, we're going to continue to run ads to divide the country.
Right.
Now, you can say, oh, that's not, it's absolutely what this Russian collusion thing is. Now, collusion's a word that is thrown around that's misconceived. I think you could say fairly wick, Russia made a huge effort, and you may say was successful in manipulating the election. Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's like I told somebody the other day. If you want to talk about white privilege, don't use white privilege as your stance, because it automatically triggers defensive feelings. Okay, when you say you got white privilege, it automatically makes a white person very defensive. You're not going to get anywhere, because they're going to immediately start telling you all of the things that they didn't have happen for them and why they don't have privilege, right? It could be a fair argument, not fair argument. But when you use white privilege, you're triggering a defensive mechanism. So your point that you're trying to make is lost. Now, if you say, black unfortunate situations or black unprivileged situation, I think people are like, okay, well, tell me more about it. What are you talking about? So I think when you say collusion and you use Trump, it automatically brings up this defensive feeling of anyone who voted for Trump saying he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't talk to the Russians. He wouldn't collude. So collusion's not really what we're talking about here. But the Russians did have a strong place in manipulating it, and they used social media to do that.
Whether he was involved or not doesn't dismiss the fact now that they did.
They did it.
Whether they did it with his blessing or not, they were doing it long before he was even the nominee.
So, yeah, I mean, look, they may have said, hey, look, we can buy ads and we can help you. We'll help you win by buying ads because we think you're a really cool dude. And he'd be like, I might be like, okay, whatever. You're going to help me win the election. Sure. I mean, but I don't think it was like, we're going to give you dirt on this and we're going to give you that. And here's some information on this so that you can be president. I think that it was, we think Trump is the most destructive candidate we can get to push our narrative. Now, maybe they've been successful.
Honestly, I don't even know if it was that. I think it was as petty as,
can we just do it?
Putin just hated Hillary because she lambasted him about the incursions into the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And he had a huge, huge chip on his shoulder and a huge axe to grind with her.
And how much of this is just, can we do it? So if you're Russia and you're sitting there saying,
what we're doing to them, I mean,
we're doing it to other people. We're doing it to other countries too. I mean, Facebook has influenced elections in other countries, third world countries. They have absolutely influenced elections.
Well, what they were talking about in Myanmar was really disturbing. Like, they don't even have the internet. You get your phone and Facebook is on it, and you come from a culture that is so underprivileged that you think Facebook is the internet.
Yes. They have influenced an election.
Right.
And what if Russia just sit back and said, and you know what? It's not anybody's fault, but what if Russia sat back and said, let's look at this. Trump's losing in the polls badly. Let's just see if we can get him to win. And if we can, then we've got the formula from the future.
Mm-hmm.
We can plant our own candidate 10 years from now. And if we can make this work and we can make an improbable candidate a president, then we figured out the magic formula for this. And it might have been just that simple from Russia. It could have just been, can we do the impossible? Can we get somebody elected that nobody thinks will win? And they maybe accomplished that. But the point of all this is
I
not,
don't. Do you think they accomplished it, or it just happened?
I don't know. I'd like to think it just happened. I
I
mean,
think it just happened, but
my thing with Trump winning is, again, I'm not getting political here, but the thing with Trump winning, after Trump won, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary. But I did vote. I don't want everybody to think I'm mixing words. I did vote. I usually vote third party. It's just something I feel like I have to do. But anyway, when he won, I was really shocked. And then I told somebody, I said, well, I'll be damned. The political system really works. If Trump got elected, it's hard for me to believe that our elections are rigged. It's hard for me to believe because, I mean, how does Trump win an election? It
ask Kennedy.
it had to, my gosh, we really do vote for the president. It really does work. And he just was able to beat out this other person that others felt like was not going to be a strong candidate. Or I could tell you a million reasons why I would have thought Trump did win. We won't go over them, but I could start justifying, okay, I can see why maybe people voted for him and this point. Oh yeah, he won the the factory states. Okay, I can justify this and things that he said to make them believe it. But I think now I wonder, was it that way? And I don't want to take away from what Trump's accomplishments have been, what his failures have been. I'm not here to insult anyone who's voted for him or Hillary. I'm just here to say we know Russia bought ads on Facebook, and maybe
I dealt with it. On I know for a fact that I've talked to bots, because you would make a comment, and then they wouldn't respond, and then you'd go to their Facebook page, and it was like one picture.
Yep.
And sometimes it got a little more sophisticated than that. There'd be a few pictures and a little bit in the about section.
Yeah.
But you don't see that as much this year, I've noticed.
Yeah.
I think people just started calling it. People just they would call it a bot and then not respond.
Well, I mean, let's just look.
So I think they changed their strategy.
Let's look at the possibility, though, of how strong social media is. If in fact, we'll probably never know, but if in fact we could find out that Russia did buy ads to get Trump elected, social media becomes extremely dangerous at that point because they were able to call an election. Now, some of you may say they may have done it, but they got the worst guy for Russia, and man, he's the best president we've ever had. If that's what you believe, that's fair. But the point is that they still may have been accomplishing this without Trump or Clinton's knowledge or campaign's knowledge. I mean, it's not hard for them to get the information and run ads. I mean, Facebook is for sale for anybody that wants to buy something to sell. And we are the product. And corporations are, in a sense, buying us. We're not really buying them. They're buying us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now we're at a point where we're at an impasse where
point of no return, it seems.
Yeah. People are indoctrinated with what they feel. It is very passionate. You guys can't sit down and talk to each other. It's nuts. Let me tell you something. This is where I lecture you. If you have defriended people, if you have cut off family, if you have stopped talking to children, the older children that think differently than you, grow up. I have some dear friends. Me and Wick don't agree on everything. And we don't hang out every day, but if Wick needed anything, I can tell him, you can call me.
Yeah. And vice versa.
But if you are at a point in your life where you have turned your back on people because of politics, you have been sucked into the zone. And I don't care if you're conservative or liberal. And Facebook,
but it is part of our
nature,
nature.
Has created this. What's that?
Because this happened in the Civil War, and there was no social
brother
media.
Against brother.
Brother against brother. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Civil War may not be 100% in the street, but it certainly started
Yeah, I mean, it
on social
ramped up
media.
for 10 years. It was a good decade. Sound
Let's look at it.
familiar?
Let's look at it this way. Social media, Facebook has fired the first shot of the Civil War,
Mhm.
second Civil War. If we don't stop, if we don't get ourselves in check, they've fired the first shot. And we're all standing right in line of that bullet, and we have all been hit.
And Putin's master plan works.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean,
And
I don't know for a fact that's his master plan, but it certainly seems. I mean, he was sowing division, and he got division, and
don't
that's sad.
don't
And
give social media this power over your
no,
emotions, over your feelings, over your love for.
we've all lived through presidents that we didn't agree with, and we're still here.
We're the only ones that can stop this. We could have stopped the first Civil War. Um,
We're the only country based on an idea.
yeah, that's a great point.
We're based on an idea, and I don't think Americans really stand back when a new administration begins and marvel at the miracle of the peaceful transfer of power.
It's amazing.
It is.
And we're starting, and you know what? We'll see if Trump wins this reelection, but we'll see if that continues. But it is one of the most humane, peaceful, beautiful things about America and its politics is that the transition of power is peaceful. Now, there's, I just saw a report that Trump's going to try to make it where he can't be. Don't
It's not
buy
going to
that
happen.
until you see that. I mean, just don't buy it until you see it. Um, but I wanted to talk to Wick about Netflix's little bit of "I'm going to be your pal" as I take advantage of you, and they do their own documentaries which paint a picture. And if you look at a documentary, and they're popular documentaries, so
Yeah,
Making a Murderer, right? Making a Murderer,
huge. And
huge
documentaries never made money until Netflix. Nobody,
until Netflix.
maybe Michael Moore, but that's
I don't
about
know
it.
if he
And
made that much money. I mean, once
I think finally, Bowling for Columbine, he did.
he did, but I think when he went, with the 9/11 thing, I think it was just too soon for people, and I
Yeah,
think that kind of hurt him. But Netflix is so we talk about like Making a Murderer. Okay, you watch that, you get done, you're like, man, that guy's innocent. How can they do that? There's so much more to that. There's so much more that was going on with that case. That that Netflix needs to. They have to paint a narrative.
it's like what I said about the Portland street corner. Is when you see those documentaries, that becomes
The whole
your only source of information,
right.
and that becomes your whole picture. Um, I think a great example would be JFK.
Yeah.
I mean, that was everybody's touchstone for the conspiracy for years, and most of it's not even true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, almost everything has been dispelled out of that. I still think it's a great movie, but it's just not true.
Well, the whole event. Uh, I mean, that is one of the first events to really create conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It is the king of conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but here we are trusting this streaming service to inform us as we're talking about how you need to see the social media dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it helps
Irony
you.
is king.
Irony is king. But I do think this is I think it's Netflix's effort to solve this cutie problem that they have, which I watched a little and I couldn't do it. I know people who have watched it and say it's over exaggerated, although it's uncomfortable at times. I've seen people say that they won't even watch it. I've heard people say that this is Netflix's way of normalizing pedophilia. Um, there's a lot of pedophilia conspiracies, which I'm sure that we'll tackle in this show, um, because they're creepy,
Yeah.
and
The
awkward.
creepiest.
Yeah, the creepiest, and so Netflix is not without its own fault, in the fact that, like I said, Making a Murderer paints a picture of an innocent man being arrested. But there's a lot more to that case that they don't put out there because it doesn't fit the narrative that they have to follow. They have a start and end point for this documentary. They need it to follow a particular line,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell you the story, and then everybody says, "Oh man, you got to see Making a Murderer." I mean, my God, this guy's innocent.
And especially with these docu-series like that, where they are tracking a case, is even the filmmakers could believe at the onset that this is an innocent guy.
Yeah.
And then as information is presented to them along the way while they are tracking the case and filming the case and making and editing this documentary, that becomes counter to what the thrust of the documentary has become. They can't stop it. Like, if they go suddenly Making of a Murderer, all this information comes out that he's innocent. They've already set up hours and hours of the documentary painting a picture of him being innocent.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of painted into a box. It's scary.
Yeah. And I mean, this case ever gets heard again, or he
Yeah.
has a retrial, what jurors hear that and have seen the documentary. The fact is, the woman who was killed was last going to his house, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say, other than Duff McKagan, the last person that saw you, usually the one that killed you, unless Duff McKagan's killed Philip Seymour Hoffman and Kurt Cobain.
Pretty sure it was heroin on both counts.
Yeah. But so listen, Netflix is playing their role in this too. I think they're trying to protect their cutie situation because they've refused to take it down. There's a lot of people canceling Netflix right now. I think this is their effort to say, okay, we're not going to really throw ourselves under the bus. We're going to throw everybody else under the bus. And I think the documentary is important. It's not the end all to be all, because really, Wick, I mean, to solve this problem, you've got to get people to disconnect. The problem is getting people to disconnect. And I don't think it's going to happen.
And it will never happen.
It'll never happen. The younger generation, particularly, this is all they know. They're not going to get off of social media.
It has to come from us, and in some way to demand that Facebook tear down these echo chambers.
Yeah,
and they'll do what we say if we reach a point of critical mass.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like, well, some people say, the government needs to create fair trade laws that extend out to social media and the internet.
Mm.
The problem that I have with that, and in a discussion with somebody else about this, they said that's okay, but what happens when this algorithm and this artificial intelligence that is in the background of Facebook, who's creating these profiles about you, who's deciding this is what you need to see, all these things that are starting to create you as another personality online to find out what you are and who you are and what you're about. What happens if the government comes in and says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to request you to give us all of the stuff that you have on these people. So all the millions and millions and millions of people who use Facebook, all these users,
right?
We want to lock away all of that, and we're going to take care of it. You're going to give it to us and load it on the trucks, and we're going to take it somewhere, and we're going to make sure that information is never gotten to again, and we're going to lock it down. Who do you think is the first person is going to use that? It's going to be the government. They're going to say, hey, you know what we got in the storage? We got all those Facebook, profiles. And we know everything about them. There's something that good that we can use that for, right? There's something good we can use it for. Certainly, in our minds, we can use it for good because we know what's best for the American people. So we'll just use it for profiles. So it's a little scary to say that the answer is, well, the government has to come in and do something, which was one of the suggestions in the documentary, that the government needs to come in and say, look, you're not sharing information anymore. And every time you do it, we're going to fine you $250,000. I think the government could say, hey, load them on the trucks. We'll take them to a warehouse and we'll make sure they're safe. And then they're going to use it for their own good or their own purposes. it's scary to think about what valuable information are on Facebook servers or Twitter servers or Instagram servers. I mean, you got to think about every private message you've ever had, all those affairs that people have had on Facebook, you know, meeting up
Your
with an old
Google search
girlfriend and
history.
yeah, you know, hey, let's meet up sometime and go get dinner, uh, how many of those situations have turned into something worse behind your spouse's back or a spouse's back or whatever. I'm sure it happens a lot.
There's that, and then there's I think the other flip side of that is most of us aren't important enough for the government to care.
No, they're not, but I think we're important as a mass. To know how we
Yeah.
think, to know how we want to do things, how to know what we're interested in. It's very important. I mean, if it's important to corporations, it is certainly important to government entities. Um, to know your interest in as a group.
No, they'll use it for campaigning.
Sure,
That's exactly what they'll use it for.
sure. 50 million people like football. Guess what? I like football too. I mean, you can use that for your own purposes to gain interest from people. And so government being involved would be a little scary. It's a little scary to let it just go freely and do nothing about it, though, at the same time. And listen, we saw these commissions get together and talk to Zuckerberg about Facebook, and it was embarrassing. I think, it's like, they don't even know how to work an email.
Yeah.
And Zuckerberg's telling them, I mean, he's like, look, it's in the documentary. He's like, hey, look, you want me to solve the problem of the internet and all this information that's out there? I can do it. But you're going to have to allow me to get more information on people. We're going to have to run more algorithms. If you let me gather more information on my users, I can solve the problems that the internet presents. But I think all he's doing, and maybe Zuckerberg doesn't know that he's doing it, but it really feels like this guy who has this pet lion
Yeah.
that he thinks he knows how to control, and that they're
Did you
buddies,
ever?
and he can scratch its belly and make it purr and scratch
I
its
think
ears.
all of this reminds me. Did you ever see the bridge on the River Kwai?
No.
It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Alec Guinness and his British soldiers are captured in its Japanese internment camp, and they are charged with building a bridge for the Japanese. And Alec Guinness is so absolutely convinced he is right, and he is the white hat, and he's the good guy. And then about halfway through the movie, they turn. Alec Guinness and the commander, the general of the camp. You suddenly see the other guy's side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if this bridge does not get built, the Japanese, I think he's a colonel actually, will be killed.
Yeah.
And you realize how desperate he is, and he's fighting for his life.
Yeah.
And who was the villain is not the villain, and who was the hero is no longer the hero. And they both have the best intentions.
I mean,
they can't see the unfortunate outcomes that their best intentions pave.
yeah. And I think that's a great lead up to where Zuckerberg is in Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got shareholders. If he lets go of this priceless information and he destroys this priceless information, then he's lost his revenue stream. He's lost everything at that point, because that is
Right.
what Facebook has done at this point. It's become its own
And he will
monster.
lose his identity as the founder of Facebook.
Sure. So he's saying, listen,
Or creator of
I
Facebook.
can, I fed this dragon, I bred this dragon. I realize that it has now burned half the city beneath my castle,
Mhm.
but I can tame it. What I need are these certain tools. If you'll just give me more tools, I know I can solve it. I know I can. It's either that, or he knows exactly what he's doing, and things have gone to his head to make him this master. Because Wick, I think I mentioned to you in private chat, I said, when we talk about conspiracy theories and we talk about the Bilderberg groups and all these rich people that get together and control us, and they have these little puppet strings and they're controlling how we do things. And man, this 1% group, they just control all the corporations. They're telling us everything they want to, blah, 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 blah. They're controlling us. They're going to take us over. They want this. What if they are not Bilderberg groups or 1%ers? But what if they are just a bunch of programmers
It's become that, I think.
that are the middlemen between the corporations that can buy us as a product and ourselves and what we're willing to give them? What if we've always thought were these secret societies of rich people? What if they are just a couple of 30, 20 something year old programmers that will decide our fate as a society by what they allow their social media platforms to do, what they allow the internet to do? I mean, these are the same people who created the dark web, the Silk Road, to sell drugs. I mean, it's a very, very intelligent group of people. And up against them, in one corner, is really, really intelligent programmers who can make computers do anything. And then in this corner is a bunch of 70-year-old senators.
Right.
It's Tyson, versus Hurricane McNeely again. I mean, it's bad. Or Leon Spinks, 90-second knockout. I mean, it's bad because they'll just dance around anything that these older guys and women just don't understand the whole process.
No.
And so what can we do from here, Wick? If we know people are not going to disconnect.
Do you think Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi really understand?
They don't even use the internet.
They're both in their 70s.
They don't even
well
understand Facebook.
Yeah.
No, they've hired people to do that work. Now, one thing I think the government could do is get their own group of programmers, own group of young people who maybe some of the people in this documentary.
Well, they're going to have to start hiring people with face tattoos then.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that.
And they're going to have to look at it that way.
Yeah.
And these people that are in the documentary warning everyone, maybe somebody from the government and, Trump or somebody maybe needs to see this and say, all right, look, we're going to put together a commission of people that are experts on the internet. And we're going to get them to advise us on how we do this within the realm of the law and how we protect people without ourselves getting that information and using it against people as well. So I think that one step is to get a committee together that is aware, understanding, and completely versed in how programming works, how social media works, how these algorithms work. People are out there that understand it. Same people that sell, when you create a website, they contact you and go, hey, you want to be number one on the search engine for your page? Let me know. Like, there are people who understand how this stuff works. And they could certainly hire a couple of programmers to come in and who understand this. And even people that work in the business model of the internet and social media platforms and say, hey, we got to put a committee together of people that are going to protect our citizens. And we need you to look at the things that are a concern and what things are you concerned about that you think we need to be aware of. And you're going to have the authority to make a lot of decisions for us. And I think that's one way to do it. But ultimately,
if we demand it with a loud enough voice and it starts interfering with commerce, that's when things change.
Because ultimately it will. And a lot of these senators and congressmen, guess what their investments are in? These same corporations that are making money hand over fist on Facebook. A lot of them are very wealthy from these companies.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when the lobbyists come in, which it's always our problem, no matter what side you're on. There's always a lobbyist that comes in from, Walmart or whatever and says, hey, look, that stock's going to fall if you go along with this commission.
And if you don't, we're going to put all this money into the next, the guy running against you in the next election cycle, and you're done.
We're at a point too where a lot that's working against us is that the politicians we have elected are not good people. They're just simply not good people. They don't look out for what they're supposed to. It's about being reelected. They're all guilty, all of them. Um, it's a game where we're the
It's
pawns.
yeah, that's a different. Yeah, that's. I mean,
That's the
it's probably
problem. You're going to very rarely find somebody that's going to say, I don't care if this costs me my job or not. This is
no, you're
too
not.
important.
Or I mean, when does a representative, a congressman in the House, have any time to actually govern when
Yeah.
he has to be reelected every 2 years?
Right.
He's on the he never stops campaigning.
Right. So he's got to play a very strong role to continue to have that position, you know? And so you're never gonna be able to shake it. I just the only advice and the only thing that I've tried to do, and you can do what I do or not. The only thing I try to do is when I see something, I try to go and research. Um, I talk to other people. I try to research the things I see, like coronavirus information,
Mm-hmm.
um, information on mask, information on anything, stuff on Trump, stuff on Biden. I really do try to do my best. You're never perfect, but I try to do my best to go and validate information that I see. I had posted something about Netflix and cuties, and a lot of people were very adamant that they were going to cancel their subscriptions. I never said that I was, and I had thought about it, but I watched this other documentary. Um, but I, I
You're like,
think
damn it, Netflix.
I think you, but I had to go and watch a little bit of cuties to say, you know what, well, I'm putting this out there, and I need to go and watch it myself and see what it is. And I didn't like it. I understood why they were. I understood the point of the movie was to say, "Hey, look, just let's
Right.
do a little snippet here," which is, "Hey, look, this is what women are under the pressure of having to do to be popular. We've got to do something about it, and here's all the things that they do in graphic detail." It's kind of like telling me that, "Hey, look, we've got animal abuse out there. It's terrible. Here's a
And then
film of
showing
somebody
it.
beating a puppy. I don't need to see the puppy being beat." And I think that that's where this film went too far. But I did have to go and do my own thing and said, you know, when I put that out there, I need to be accountable and go and see my bits of this and see if I can sit through it, which I couldn't. But I did try.
You didn't just ride your emotion
Right, right.
to
I said, you know, and if I need to go back in there and change
the
what I said, then
farthest
I will.
reaches, and
Right. But I think we all need to do that. Here's something that I think is really missing is self accountability. We have lost the ability to be accountable for ourselves on Facebook because it's just words we've typed out. It's just things that we've said. And the next day you're over it and moved on and you're looking for the next fight. Be
yeah,
accountable for what you be a representative of who you are on Facebook and social media. Be
take
accountable for what you say.
take
Take
30
accountability.
seconds before you respond.
Right.
Ask, is this really worth it?
Right. Take an accountability of what your representation is. And try to see where there are so many debates I've had on Facebook where I've actually said, you know what? I'm probably wrong. And that's just, you know, if I say
Awesome.
I've even said too, if I say I'm wrong, can we stop? And somebody will say, yeah, if you admit that you're wrong, we can stop. And I'll go, I'm wrong. Because it's just not worth the energy. And sometimes I really do learn a lot. But it's one of those things where I encourage the only way you can really fight this and not unplug, because me and Wick know you're not going to unplug. Me and Wick probably aren't going to unplug either.
No.
Social media is too important. Here we are doing our show.
Yeah.
I think when YouTube's suggesting,
But adults change the system from within.
yes, but
And
when things are being suggested to you, when YouTube is suggesting you to watch a video other than ours, you need to, you know, say, why are they suggesting that? What's the purpose of that? What is this about? When things are showing up on your, I'm telling you, give it a week or two, see what's showing up on your wall. You'll know exactly what Facebook thinks you are. And they're probably going to be right.
what YouTube thinks you are, and what TikTok thinks you are,
What
what
Twitter
Reddit
thinks you
thinks
are.
you are. what Twitter
Twitter's
thinks you
going to
are.
suggest people for you to follow based on the things that you do. They're going to do it based on who you follow, the tweets that you make. Go and look at the suggestions. Go and look at your suggested follows. There'll be people that follow your ideas that have the same feelings you do. And you'll be surrounded by people that think just like you. And that will
But
make
it also does, and I've noticed, go outside of politics. If you comment or go to a page, suddenly you will have a list of pages of artists you may like.
mm-hmm,
There's
mm-hmm.
more to this damn life than politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe use Facebook for what it was intended for.
Yeah.
You know, I think what Facebook could really
Having
do,
affairs.
I think what Facebook could really do is say, look, we're not going to do political content anymore. If y'all want to talk about it, y'all talk about it. But memes, news stories, YouTube videos, if it's political, it's no more going to be on Facebook. I think that would be a huge step because it wouldn't hurt their overall revenue other than an election season when the Trump campaign and Biden campaign are buying ads. And I think it's going to be a really small percentage of their overall revenue. I don't mind if I'm looking for a golf club. Listen, I've been looking for a guitar or a golf club, and I suddenly got a suggestion, been like, hot damn, what a deal. You know, I mean, I've used it and said, oh crap, dude, that's $100 less than what I found. I'm all over this. So I don't have much of a problem when it comes to consumerism, because if I'm actively searching out something to buy and I've found a way to get it, ways that I want it to get it, then it's like, okay, this was
I
a
mean, that
benefit to
empowers,
me.
and that's empowering for us, the consumer.
Right. For the consumer. But I think Facebook could go a long way of saying, you know what, if it's politically motivated, y'all can talk about what you want. Now, if you want to post things, that's fine. But we're no longer going to be in the business of feeding you political information. We're done. And I think it would go a long way to slow things down. But we're in a very dangerous place unless something drastically happens like that. And maybe we need to call on Facebook to make that change and say, look, you know, when it comes to anything that you're providing us that's political, it needs to go in the trash. And
I
you
wish
want to
people
sell us?
would watch the Social Dilemma in the same in the same numbers they watch Tiger King. That would be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Listen, Tiger King. We are just talking about Netflix. Tiger King. Everybody and their grandmother's convinced that Carol Baskins has killed her husband. What if she didn't?
I didn't.
Yeah, of course she did. But what if she
They should.
didn't? What a terrible life to live with everybody. And what do you think happens
Right.
on social media? What do you think she hears let's say the woman really did not kill her husband. What do you think her social media life is like? Because it is probably brought to her attention on a regular basis.
I think she just got a show.
Hmm?
I think she just got a show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she did. And listen, there are people that are on these reality TV shows. I've seen it where people on these reality TV shows that do something on the show that they don't like. And then I saw one person, this was like maybe a year ago, do something that on the reality show that people didn't like, maybe made fun of somebody or said something. There were people that went on that person's social media page, like their Twitter, and posted thousands of pages of pictures of an arrest from 20 years ago. Just to get back at, I don't like what you said on there, so now I'm just going to make your life miserable by bringing up, you know, your the one time you got caught for a DUI 20 years ago, and I'm going to keep posting that over and over, hundreds, thousands of times, and I'm going to get other people to redo it, and I'm going to have other people retweet it. People, where are we at? You know, I mean, get a grip on your emotions. Don't let social media play your emotions. We have to get out of this corner. And the social media dilemma is a great place to start your research, to further your education.
What is being done to you?
Yeah, what's being done to you
and your loved ones?
Yeah, and listen, some of you have you know, disconnected from your parents. Your parents have disconnected from you. You've disconnected from your children. You've disconnected from your friends. You might have had there are people that had best friends that don't talk anymore because of their political. Stop all that nonsense.
Do you
Stop
think
that
anybody
shit.
at the end of the Civil War was happy that they had dissolved the ties with their families?
You will not be happy in the end.
No,
You will not be
none
happy
of
on the
them.
things you missed out from somebody that you cared about deeply, just because they politically view it. It's not anybody's fault. You're being used. They got used.
This will be over in, I would say, a couple of month and a half, but in a few months, by January.
Yeah. An election has happened and life has moved on.
And like, yeah,
And you can't change it. If it's Trump again, you just have to suck it up for 4 years. You know what I mean? If Biden wins, you got to suck it up for 4 years. Come back to the table in 4 years. We'll see you in the table in 4 years.
It's how democracy works.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sometimes the other guy wins.
Yeah, it's okay, but don't lose yourself over it. Don't lose things in your life over it. And that's what we're seeing. And the social media dilemma paints that picture for us a little bit better. I know Wick is with me. Watch it. Do your own research on it. Figure
Please
out what's
watch
best
it.
for you. Yeah. Do some research on it. You don't believe it? That's fine. Go dig a little deeper. That's what I'm currently doing in my own life.
If you don't want to watch it for yourself, watch it for your children, because there's a lot of information in there, what it does, especially to preteen girls.
Yes.
Since 2011, preteen suicides have gone up 151%.
Kids are killing themselves.
That should be a public health crisis.
Yes, it should.
In and of itself.
Yes. And that is a very important thing to leave it on. Is that if you blow it off and you're looking over and your kid's on Facebook, Twitter, or anything else, you better think long and hard about what they're dealing with on social media and how it can push. There are people whose children,
it's worse than you think.
Sadly,
as bad as you think it is, it's worse.
It's worse. And there are people who have lost children and will tell you, I don't even know how it happened. I don't even know what happened. And some parents don't have answers still. And it comes down to social media. The fear that a lot of these kids are feeling because of the coronavirus. A lot of the fear these kids are dealing with other people who are trolling them. The predators that are on there. I mean,
the bullying, the predators, everything.
If you don't watch this for you, Wick is 100% right. Watch it for your kids. Because if your kids are any type of social media, they are absolutely in danger.
They are. And it's, again, I can't underscore enough. It's worse than you know.
Yes.
It was worse than I know. And I have a vivid imagination and a pessimistic leaning.
Yes.
And it was worse than I thought. Very much so.
Oh my God, this guy.
Especially when the Falcons lose.
Oh God. Wick, it's going to be okay, buddy. I mean, we love you. Don't jump. But yeah, I mean, everybody has that thing, and when you're right now in social media, if you're very, very, very involved with it, it's very negative. I mean, there are kids that are killing themselves because of feeling like this is the end. Get in touch with your kids, man, and watch this documentary. You don't have to believe every ounce of it, but let it be a guide for you to research a little bit further on what's important. And I think you have to fight what they're doing to you by stepping back and doing your own research, talking with people of opposing views. It's really, really important. Wick, this is a really, really good episode for me. I really
it was
enjoyed
fun
it with you. Folks, share us, do that whole thing. Don't forget, we're going to go YouTube next.
Crack the like button.
Yeah, hit the like button. Join us on YouTube. I'll put it out there where we're going to be moving to. You will still be able to see us on Facebook because I will put those episodes here. But YouTube is just a little bit, as far as social media goes, now that I'm going to preach to you about, hey, you got a bigger market over there.
Here's how we're trying to capitalize on it.
Yeah. Don't trust the social media, but go to web.
Don't trust us.
And trust us and go to YouTube.
I mean, do trust us, yes.
But it's just an easier format for us to use, and I feel like we can grow a little bit there.
And we can probably make the streaming time a little earlier.
Yeah,
this way.
Yeah, because there, what we can either stream it or we can go ahead and just pre-record it and then put it out whenever we want.
Right.
So, we're not restricted to Sundays and keeping you guys up if you watch. We can put it on a Friday night or whatever night we think is going to get us a lot of attention. We can pre-record it and just put it out when we want to. So
Yeah,
we'll
talking
be
till
looking at a
2
lot of
a.m.
options
about
there. Yep. And
Twisted Sister.
yeah, yeah. So if this didn't creep you out, we'll definitely have something that will creep you out because it should creep you out and give you a little
This
bit
is
of
very
willies.
creepy.
This is a
Yeah.
very creepy thing.
And if you watch the show, I mean, if you watch The Social Dilemma, you will be unnerved.
Which is what we're about here. We're unnerving
It's
you.
like yeah.
It's very, very Twilight Zone-ish. I mean, just think about Facebook having this empty computer vessel of you that they have filled to be your identical twin online, that they can control the real you by what that fake profile of you in their little computer does. They basically determine this is what you will do. This is what you won't do. This is where your moral fiber is. This is where your moral fiber isn't. This is what you will vote for. This is what you won't vote for. This is what you eat. This is what you don't like.
Right.
That's creepy. And that's what we're about. Folks, thanks so much. Wick, did you want to say anything before we get out of here?
That's it. I'm good.
I did want to say something real quick. I have a friend. I don't know if you have the friend as well, but her sister is currently going through a heart transplant. It is actually going on as we speak. She needed a heart transplant. She is finally getting one. I think there were some complications.
Wonderful.
Some complications, but wonderful that she got it. Yes, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. There are some complications. So if you know Katie V. God, I think her Arvia, I just know her as Katie V. God. Keep her in your thoughts and prayers, whatever you believe in, the universe, whatever. Put some positive thoughts out that she'll be held up. It's a pretty big deal to get a heart transplant. I'm sure very few people get it every year, but she has one. She's doing pretty good, but not out of the woods. There's some complications, and positive thoughts. Everything's going to be okay for her and her family. If you do or don't know them, please just keep a positive thought for them, for that to turn out well, because they are in the midst of fighting an infection and whatnot. So I'm a believer in mass positive thinking. And you don't have to believe in anything in a certain degree for that to work. So if you pray. If you meditate. If you put it out there in the universe, please do that. I know they'll appreciate it. I have come to the conclusion that, I was thinking the other day before I leave out of here, because I don't know if I ever mentioned it again. I had this thought of why some people are fortunate and why some people are not fortunate. The unfortunate versus the unfortunate. How in the world are you born into a abusive family while somebody else is born into a middle class great family? Why are there some people on the other side of the world that are born into poverty, and in America you somehow popped out of birth canal and silver spoon in your mouth? And I went to sleep, and something, I won't say what I think it was, but something just spoke to me and said, there are unfortunate and fortunate people because it's a test. Will you, as a fortunate person, help those that are unfortunate? That's why you both exist. So I just want people to think about that, because oftentimes we're like, why does this happen for somebody and not happen for somebody? Why does Katie have a bad heart? Why do I have a good heart? Why does the genetic DNA give me that? Why am I so fortunate? And I think there's a lot of guilt that goes with that when you see people that are not well or in poverty or whatever. I think the answer is that we're tested to see, will the fortunate be there for the unfortunate? It's kind of changed my thinking on how life works and how we're judged at the end of the day, whether we're going to some cosmic alien spaceship or what. But think about that. So when I ask for positive thoughts, it's a feather in your cap, I think. So do that, please. I would really appreciate it. Now they would. I do believe in massive positive thought, like I said, prayers, concentration, meditation on things that are positive, I think do work. Our brain power is a little bit stronger than we think it is in a spiritual factor. So please think about them. Please think about her and hope for a good recovery and a successful heart transplant. I know her family would really appreciate it. And that's my spiel for the end. And we will see you guys next week with something interesting, Wick.
Yeah. I think I've got mine picked out.
Oh, okay. All right. He'll hit me up. I know we will.
Yep.
But we'll bring something fun to you guys. And like I said, we'll go to YouTube. We'll bring it back here. We're going to probably change the name of the show a little bit. And like I said, this is going to be kind of the theme. We'll think of really cool things just to unnerve you, awkward, weird stuff. Some of it will be a lot of fun and some of it will be like, holy crap. So stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Thanks
Please
so much
do.
for watching.
Please do.
Sleep well. We will see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.